An open marriage was her idea. Why is she the one in tears? My wife Chloe is crying in our bedroom right now. Deep, gut-wrenching sobs. And it's my fault. Except it's not. It can't be. Because every single action I took, every decision that led to her breakdown, was born from a set of rules she created. This is the story of how I won a game I never wanted to play. You see, 3 months ago, my wife came to me and told me she wanted to upgrade our marriage. Her words, not mine. And her idea of an upgrade, an open marriage. Let me set the scene for you. We were living the dream, or so I thought. 7 years of marriage. This incredible loft in River North. I'm an IT architect. I build complex systems for a living. I thrive on logic, on structure, on things making sense. Chloe. Chloe thrives on the opposite. She's an art manager at a trendy gallery. She's all about passion, spontaneity, the shock of the new. For years, that dynamic worked. I was her rock. She was my beautiful, chaotic whirlwind. I loved it. I loved her. But I started to feel a shift. The way she'd look at me sometimes with this sort of affectionate pity. The way our sacred Thursday date nights, the one rule we'd had since we met, started to feel more like a scheduled maintenance check than a passionate rendezvous. I was predictable, stable, and in her world, predictable was a death sentence. The conversation happened on one of those Thursdays. I'd cooked her favorite, cacio e pepe. We had a bottle of Barolo open. I was talking about a breakthrough I'd had on a network security project, and I saw her eyes glaze over. "Mark," she said, putting her fork down. Her voice had that tone, the one that precedes a difficult conversation. It was calm, gentle, and utterly terrifying. "What's up, Chloe?" I asked, trying to keep my voice light. She looked around our perfect apartment at the life we had built. "Don't you ever feel like we're plateauing? Like we've hit a ceiling?" My stomach tightened. As a systems guy, I know what a plateau means. It means the end of growth. "I thought we were happy," I said, and the words sounded weak even to my own ears. "We are happy, we are," she insisted, reaching across the table to take my hand. Her touch felt electric, but not in a good way. It felt like a precursor to a shock. "But we're 35 and 33. Are we just supposed to coast for the next 50 years? Is this it? Just us?" The "just us" hit me like a physical blow. For me, just us was the entire point. It was the foundation of everything. And then she laid it out. She'd been reading articles, listening to podcasts about modern love, relationship evolution, and ethical non-monogamy. She presented the idea of an open marriage not as a betrayal, but as a feature update, an upgrade, a way to bring new energy, new stories, new life into our marriage, so we wouldn't suffocate each other. "Think of it, Mark," she said, her eyes alight with the passion I hadn't seen in months. A passion for an idea that was about to shatter my world. Total freedom, but we remain each other's primary partner. The home base. No secrets, no lies. We bring the best of our outside experiences back to enrich this. She gestured between the two of us. I just stared at her. My logical brain was short-circuiting. It was trying to process the variables, the risk analysis. All I could see was a gaping security flaw being intentionally programmed into the core of our system. "You want to sleep with other people," I said, the words feeling like sandpaper in my throat. "I want to experience other people," she corrected gently. "And I want you to as well. It's not just about sex. It's about connection, about conversations, about seeing ourselves through new eyes. It'll make us appreciate each other more." Every instinct in my body screamed no. I'm a one-woman man. I'm a possessive bastard deep down. I know that about myself. The thought of her with someone else, it wasn't just anger. It was a visceral, physical revulsion. But then I looked at her face. She wasn't asking for my permission. She was telling me the new terms and conditions of our life together. I knew with the cold certainty of a systems analyst predicting a crash that if I said no, I would lose her. She would see me as the anchor holding her back, the boring, conservative husband who didn't get it. The resentment would build, and she'd leave anyway, just slower and more painfully. So I did what any man terrified of losing the center of his universe would do. I negotiated. We need rules, I said, my voice hoarse. Her face lit up. She saw my capitulation as collaboration. Of course, rules are key. That's what makes it ethical. And so, we wrote the code for our own destruction. Rule number 1, absolute radical honesty. We had to tell each other everything. Who, when, what happened. No details spared if asked. The stated goal was to eliminate jealousy through transparency. In hindsight, it was like trying to eliminate a fire by describing it in excruciating detail to the person it's burning. Rule number 2, no emotional attachments. These were to be experiences, not relationships. No falling in love. A rule so naive, so fundamentally ignorant of human nature that it was laughable. Rule number 3, Thursday nights are ours. Period. Non-negotiable. The one sacred firewalled part of our life. This was the rule I clung to, my last bastion of hope. I agreed. I nodded. I drank the wine that now tasted like acid, and I watched the woman I loved celebrate her newfound freedom from the prison of our life together. That night, for the first time in 7 years, I didn't sleep in our bed. I told her I needed to process. I went into my home office, closed the door, and just sat there in the dark, staring at the blinking lights of my server rack. They were logical, predictable. Green for good, amber for warning, red for failure. My entire marriage had just gone from solid green to a flashing, critical red. And the worst part? I was the one who had just entered the admin password and clicked accept. I thought that night was the worst I would ever feel. The sheer, hollowed-out shock of it all. But I was wrong. So wrong. The pain was just getting started. What came next was so much more insidious than a simple, clean break. It was a death by 1,000 honest cuts. Chloe, true to her nature, dove into the deep end without a moment's hesitation. She was reborn. Suddenly, her weeks were filled with gallery openings that ended with drinks with a fascinating sculptor, or networking events that led to coffee with a brilliant musician. And per rule number 1, she told me everything. She'd come home glowing, her cheeks flushed with the thrill of a new connection, and sit on the edge of our bed while I was trying to read or work. "You will not believe the conversation I had with Julian tonight," she'd say, her voice buzzing. "He's a poet. He sees the world in metaphors. It was so refreshing." I'd just nod, my eyes fixed on my laptop screen. "That's great, Chloe." "Great? Mark, it was incredible. It makes me see our life, our art, everything in a new light. This is exactly what I was talking about. I feel so alive." And I'd sit there, a spectator in my own life, listening to my wife talk about the men who were making her feel alive, while my presence was apparently the equivalent of a sensory deprivation tank. She wasn't malicious. That was the truly insane part. In her mind, she was sharing her joy, bringing this new energy back to me, like a cat proudly dropping a dead mouse at its owner's feet. She genuinely expected me to be happy for her, and she mistook my quiet, methodical processing for acceptance. My silence wasn't agreement. It was the sound of a system being overloaded, on the verge of a catastrophic failure. The nights were the worst. I stopped sleeping. I'd lie there, staring at the ceiling, my mind a relentless loop of images I couldn't unsee, scenarios I couldn't control. My logical brain, the one that built secure digital fortresses, was being tortured by its own imagination. I started losing weight. My work suffered. I felt like a ghost in my own home, haunting the memory of a marriage that was, for all intents and purposes, dead. I was at my absolute lowest about a month in. She had just come back from a weekend art retreat in Wisconsin. She'd told me all about it, of course. The bonfires, the deep talks, the organic connection she'd made with a landscape painter named Leo. As she unpacked, the faint, unfamiliar scent of wood smoke and cheap men's cologne clung to her sweater. And I just broke. Not in front of her. Never in front of her. I went into the bathroom, turned on the shower so she wouldn't hear, and I just sat on the floor, my head in my hands, completely and utterly defeated. I felt weak, pathetic, a cliche, the nice guy who finished last in his own marriage. I have to ask, have you ever been in a situation where you felt completely and utterly powerless? Where the rules of the game were changed on you, and you felt like you had no choice but to play along or lose everything? Drop a comment below. Seriously. At that point, I honestly needed to know I wasn't the only person on the planet who had ever felt that way. Sitting there on the cold tile of the bathroom floor, something inside me shifted. The grief was still there. The humiliation was still burning. But underneath it, a new process began to initialize. It was cold. It was quiet. It was the IT architect in me waking up. I had been treating this as a relationship problem, an emotional crisis, and I was losing, badly, because Chloe was the master of that domain. She spoke the language of feelings, of spiritual needs, of personal growth. I couldn't fight her on that turf. But what if I was looking at the problem all wrong? This wasn't a relationship anymore. It was a system with a new, deeply flawed set of rules. And I am an architect of systems. My entire career is about finding exploits, understanding protocols, and using the defined parameters of a system to achieve a desired outcome. She created the rules. I never have to break a single one. A cold, clean clarity washed over me. The objective was no longer to save my marriage. The old marriage was gone. The objective was no longer to endure the pain. That was a losing strategy. The new objective was simple: win the game. Not with screaming matches or ultimatums. Not with emotional appeals. That was her language. I would beat her using mine. Logic, strategy, and a meticulous, cold-blooded execution of the very rules she had written. The revenge I started planning that night wasn't hot-blooded. It wasn't about causing a scene. It was a long-term project, a systematic dismantling of her perceived control. I dried my eyes, stood up, and looked at my reflection in the mirror. I didn't recognize the hollowed-out man looking back at me, but I knew the man I was about to become. The next morning, I didn't mope. I didn't make sarcastic comments. I made Chloe her favorite latte, kissed her goodbye as she left for the gallery, and then I sat down at my computer. I didn't open my work terminal. First, I Googled the highest-rated gyms in our neighborhood. I signed up for a premium membership. Second, I researched stylists. I booked a consultation. Third, I looked for something that would terrify me, something that would force me out of my comfortable, predictable shell. I found a 6-week introductory course on stand-up comedy. The thought of it made me physically ill. I booked it on the spot. Project Chimera, I called it in my head, a beast made of disparate parts designed for a single purpose. The game was on, and Chloe had no idea she was no longer the only one playing. The first few weeks were hell. Pure, unadulterated, self-inflicted hell. My first session at the gym with a personal trainer left me so sore I could barely lower myself into my office chair. I felt weak, clumsy, and old. But every time I wanted to quit, I pictured Chloe's face, glowing as she talked about some free-spirited barista. And I'd force myself to do one more set. The pain became fuel. It was something I could control. The stylist was a brutal but necessary ego check. He went through my closet with the detached air of a surgeon removing a tumor. My sensible, practical wardrobe was replaced with tailored shirts, better-fitting jeans, a leather jacket I never would have picked for myself. When I looked in the mirror, I saw a stranger, but a more interesting one. The stand-up class was the real trial by fire. I am not a performer. I am the guy who works behind the scenes to make sure the performers' microphones work. The first time I stood on that tiny stage in a dingy bar basement, holding a microphone with a sweaty palm, I completely blanked. The 2 minutes of silence I endured felt longer than my entire life. I was awful, truly spectacularly bad. But I'm a systems guy. I don't give up. I approached it like a coding problem. I studied the structure of a joke, setup, punchline, the logic of misdirection. I started writing, not about airplane food or generic observations, but about my life, about the absurdities of corporate IT culture, the jargon, the pointless meetings, the synergistic frameworks. I was writing about my world, my language. And on the third week, something happened. I told a joke about trying to explain cloud computing to my mother-in-law, and the room laughed. Not a pity laugh, a real, genuine, rolling laugh. It was like a drug. For the first time in months, I felt a surge of validation that had nothing to do with Chloe. It was mine. I had earned it. Meanwhile, back at home, Chloe was noticing the changes. "You're at the gym a lot," she'd comment, a little surprised. "Just trying to get healthier," I'd say, shrugging, before heading out the door. "Is that a new jacket?" "Yeah, my old one was getting worn out." I never offered more information than was required. I was becoming a black box. My new life was my own. I wasn't sharing it to enrich our connection. I was building a separate entity, and it was starting to make her curious. The predictability she'd grown bored of was being replaced by an intriguing new set of variables she couldn't account for. The real shift happened during the fifth week of my stand-up class. After the session, a few of us went to a nearby bar for a drink. I was talking to one of the other students, a woman named Jessica. Let me tell you about Jessica. She wasn't an ephemeral artist or a passionate musician. Jessica was a corporate lawyer. She was sharp, wickedly funny, and had a mind that moved as fast as mine. She specialized in intellectual property, and when I started talking about the architecture of data security, her eyes didn't glaze over. They lit up. She asked intelligent questions. She challenged my assumptions. We talked for 2 hours, sparring, laughing, and dissecting everything from patent law to the ethics of AI. It was the most intellectually stimulated I had felt in years. That night, Chloe was telling me about a date she'd had with a bartender who was in a band. She was describing his tattoos with a kind of anthropological fascination. I listened patiently. When she was done, I took a sip of my water. "That's cool," I said calmly. "You know, I met someone really interesting tonight." Chloe's posture changed. It was subtle, but I saw it. She leaned forward slightly. "Oh yeah, at the gym?" "No, at this stand-up course I've been taking. Her name is Jessica. She's a lawyer, incredibly smart. We got into this amazing debate about the legal personhood of artificial intelligence. I watched her process this. A bartender with tattoos versus a lawyer who debates AI. I wasn't being malicious. I was just being honest. Per rule number one, I was sharing my experience. But I knew, with the precision of a well-written algorithm, what this was doing. It was creating a contrast. Her adventures suddenly seemed a little juvenile. Her fascinating men seemed a little less impressive. For the first time since this whole nightmare began, a tiny, almost imperceptible seed of insecurity had been planted in the mind of my beautiful, confident, free-spirited wife. I thought the video was the worst part. I was wrong. The flowers. The flowers were when she first realized that the rules she wrote could be used as a weapon. And what I found next in her laptop bag, that's what truly broke me. Just kidding. There was no laptop bag. But the flower part, that's what really broke her. The next phase of the plan required precision. It was about taking the abstract concepts of her philosophy and making them brutally, tangibly real. It was about using rule number one, radical honesty, not as a tool for intimacy, but as a weapon of psychological warfare. The opportunity came on a Thursday, our sacred, inviolable Thursday. I came home from work a little early and stopped at a high-end florist. I didn't buy roses. I bought a large architectural bouquet of white lilies and strange, beautiful tropical leaves. It was the kind of thing Chloe would love. Artistic. A statement piece. I walked into the loft, and she was in the kitchen, prepping for our dinner. She saw the bouquet and her face broke into a radiant smile. The first genuine, uncomplicated smile she'd given me in months. "Oh, Mark, they're stunning. What are they for?" she asked, walking over to kiss me. I let her kiss my cheek, then stepped past her to the kitchen counter. "They're for Jessica," I said, my voice perfectly level. "She won a huge case today, a big patent infringement suit she's been working on for 6 months. I told her I'd send her something to celebrate." I started unwrapping the flowers as if it were the most normal thing in the world. Chloe just stood there. The smile had vanished from her face, replaced by a slack-jawed confusion. You bought flowers for another woman? And you brought them here?" I looked at her, feigning innocence. "Yeah, Rule number one, right? Honesty. I didn't want to hide it. I figured I'd bring them here, put them in a vase, and then I can drop them off at her apartment tomorrow on my way to work. It's no big deal. No big deal. Her voice was rising. It's Thursday, Mark, our night, and you're bringing another woman's celebration flowers into our home? It's not impacting our night, I said calmly, finding our largest vase. We're still going to have dinner. I'm still here. I'm just being honest about something good that happened to a friend. Isn't that the point? To share our lives? I was using her own words, her own utopian bullshit rhetoric, and turning it back on her. Every argument she tried to make would be a contradiction of the very principles she had championed. She watched, speechless, as I arranged the lilies in the vase and placed them right in the center of our dining table. The centerpiece for our sacred Thursday dinner was a tribute to another woman's success. A woman who represented everything Chloe was not. Intellectual, professional, and someone who was impressed by my mind, not bored by my stability. The dinner was the most excruciatingly silent meal of our lives. The scent of the lilies filled the room. Every time she looked up, she saw them. I, on the other hand, was perfectly pleasant. I asked about her day. I talked about my work. I acted as if nothing was wrong. I was following the rules. I was being a perfect, modern, evolved husband, and I could see it was killing her. The freedom she had craved was no longer a fun, one-sided adventure. It was a two-way street, and the person coming down the other lane had a much faster car. The next few weeks, the dynamic in our home was completely inverted. She became watchful, insecure. "Are you seeing Jessica tonight?" she'd ask, trying to sound casual. "Oh no, I'm just heading to the gym," I'd reply. Or, "Just grabbing a drink with some guys from the comedy class." I was still being honest. I never lied. I just stopped volunteering information. The transparency she had demanded was now something she had to pry out of me. She started checking my phone. I knew because she was clumsy about it, leaving apps open. I didn't even care enough to be angry. I just put a stronger password on it. Not to hide anything, but simply to demonstrate that my life was no longer open access for her. It was my own. I was also using her language, the self-help, pop psychology jargon she loved. One evening, she tried to have a check-in with me. "I feel like there's a distance between us, Mark," she said, her brow furrowed with concern. "I don't think it's distance," I replied thoughtfully, repeating a phrase she'd used on me months ago. "I think it's just individual growth. This whole experience has helped me get in touch with different parts of myself. My conversations with Jessica, for instance, they're not a threat to us. They help me understand my own intellectual needs better. It's actually enriching what we have." The look on her face was a masterpiece of conflicting emotions. She couldn't argue with the logic because it was her logic. She was being checkmated with her own moves. The game she had designed to service her boredom was now showing her what it felt like to be the one left at home. Wondering, worrying, and feeling profoundly inadequate, she started trying to claw back control, suggesting they reevaluate the rules. Maybe pause things for a bit. "But why?" I'd ask with genuine curiosity. "Is something wrong? I thought this was working perfectly. I feel more energized, more confident than I have in years. Isn't this what you wanted?" She had no answer. She had uncaged a beast, and now she was shocked it wouldn't heal on command. The final act was approaching. I knew I had to make a definitive move that would end the game, once and for all. It had to be clean, undeniable, and executed perfectly within the framework of her rules. Our anniversary was coming up, our 8th, and I knew she would see it as the ultimate opportunity to reset things, to reclaim me, to prove that she was still the primary partner. And I was going to let her walk right into the trap she couldn't see I was setting. The next part of this story, this is where it all comes to a head. This is the moment the entire carefully constructed system either holds or crashes spectacularly. So if you're not subscribed, now is probably the time. You really don't want to miss how this ends. Chloe started planning our anniversary trip about a month out. She was dropping hints, leaving travel magazines open to pages on Napa Valley. It was where we'd gone for our honeymoon. It was our place. Her strategy was clear: a grand romantic gesture, a return to the scene of our origin story, designed to remind me of what we had and effectively erase the last few months of experimentation. It was a desperate, transparent, and frankly pathetic move, and I watched her do it, playing my part to perfection. "Oh, Napa, that could be nice," I'd say noncommittally, never giving her a firm yes, but never saying no. I let her build the entire fantasy in her head. The week before our anniversary, she sat me down on the couch. She had that excited, nervous energy again. She was holding a beautiful leather-bound folder. "Okay, so, for our anniversary," she began, opening the folder to reveal flight confirmations and a reservation at the Auberge du Soleil, the exact same luxury hotel from our honeymoon. I booked it, first class, the whole 9 yards, a complete reset. Just you and me. No distractions, no outside energy. It's time to come back home. To us. She looked at me, her eyes shining with hope, with the absolute certainty that this grand gesture would fix everything, that I would melt, that I'd see the error of my ways, which were, of course, her ways, and we would go back to being the old Mark and Chloe. I let the silence hang in the air for a few beats. I looked at the tickets. I looked at her hopeful, anxious face, and then I delivered the kill shot. I did it gently, without malice, almost with a tone of regret. That was the key, no anger, just the cold, hard, inescapable logic of the system she had built. "Chloe," I said, my voice soft, "this is an incredible gesture. It really is. But I can't go." Her smile faltered. "What? What do you mean you can't go?" "I already booked it." "I know, and I'm sorry you did that without confirming with me first," I said, my tone still apologetic. "But I already have plans for that weekend. Non-refundable plans." The confusion on her face was warring with a dawning horror. "Plans? What plans? It's our anniversary, Mark." "I know," I said. "But you know how that music festival in Austin is always that weekend? The one we talked about going to years ago? Well, Jessica's a huge fan of one of the headliners. She got tickets for us a couple of months ago as a surprise. I can't back out on her now. The tickets and the hotel are completely non-refundable. You know the rules we set. No emotional attachments, but we also agreed to respect any plans made with other people and not to be flakes. It wouldn't be fair to her." Every word was a perfectly calibrated blow. "I have plans with the other woman, on our anniversary, to do something you and I once dreamed of doing, and I'm justifying it using a logical extension of your rules." Her world didn't just crack, it imploded. The entire foundation of her reality, the one where she was the sun and I was just a planet in her orbit, the one where her experiences were a fun side project while I remained the stable, waiting husband, was vaporized in an instant. She wasn't the adventurous one with the exciting life anymore. She was the one being left behind for a cooler, more interesting plan. She wasn't the primary partner. She was an option that hadn't been chosen. She wanted to add features to our marriage, and in the process, she'd made herself redundant. "You, you're choosing to go to a music festival with her over our anniversary trip to Napa?" Her voice was a broken whisper. "I'm not choosing her over you, Chloe," I said, and this was the most devastatingly honest thing I'd said in months. "I'm choosing to honor a commitment I made. It's about integrity. It's about following the rules we both agreed to. You were the one who said we shouldn't let our primary relationship stifle other connections. I'm just respecting that." She just stared at me. Her face, which had been so full of hope just minutes before, crumpled. Her breath hitched. Her eyes filled with tears, and then they spilled over, silently at first, then with a choked sob. She closed the leather folder, the dream of Napa turning to ash in her hands. She tried to argue, to rage, to bargain. "This isn't what I meant," she cried. "But it's what the rules say," I replied calmly. "You're doing this to hurt me. I'm doing this to be honest. It's what we promised each other. I hate her. You don't even know her. And this isn't about her. It's about the agreement we made." She had no moves left. I had used her own logic to build a fortress she could not breach. The freedom she had so desperately wanted had become her cage. She looked at me, at this new man I had become. Calm, confident, independent, and utterly in control. And she finally realized she had been completely and totally outplayed. She stood up, shaking. and walked towards the bedroom. Before she closed the door, she looked back at me, her face a mask of pure, undiluted misery and disbelief. "I thought you loved me," she whispered. "I did," I said quietly. "More than anything." And then she closed the door, and the sobbing began. The deep, gut-wrenching sobs of someone who has gambled everything and lost in the worst way imaginable. Not to a cheater, not to a liar, but to a player who simply understood the game better than she did. So that brings us to now. I'm sitting here in our living room, listening to the muffled sounds of my wife's world ending. My bag for Austin is packed and sitting by the door. In it is a new leather jacket, a couple of tailored shirts, and the notebook containing the tight 5-minute stand-up set I'm going to perform at an open mic night there. Jessica thought it would be a fun challenge. There's no joy in this for me, no triumphant feeling of victory. I don't feel happy. I just feel quiet. The rage is gone. The humiliation is gone. The pain is gone. In their place is a cold, hollow calm, the feeling you get when you've successfully decommissioned a failed system. I executed a flawless plan. I took an untenable situation, analyzed the parameters, and achieved my objective. I proved that her progressive, selfish fantasy was a house of cards. I took back my power, my self-respect. I became the man she was once crazy about, only to show her that this version of me no longer needed her validation to exist. But what did I win? I won the ashes of a marriage. I won the silence in a beautiful, empty loft. I won the knowledge that I could systematically and emotionally dismantle the person I had promised to love and protect. She wanted an upgrade and she got one, just not the one she was expecting. She upgraded her husband into someone who could live without her. The door to the bedroom is still closed. My flight is in 5 hours. I have a decision to make. Do I open that door, sit on the bed, and try to salvage something from the wreckage? If I do, it will be on my terms. The open marriage is over. The game is over. We would have to start from scratch, from ground zero, and I don't even know if I have the energy for that. I don't know if I can ever look at her again without seeing the person who was willing to shatter my heart out of sheer boredom. Or do I pick up my bag, walk out that door, and go to Austin? Do I go and live the life I've started building for myself, independent of her? I don't know if I'm in love with Jessica. I don't even know if that's what this is about. She's just the first person in a long time who has seen me for who I am, not for who she wanted me to be. The balance of power is forever changed. No matter what happens next, it will never be the same. She broke the foundation, and I was forced to build a new one, for myself on my own. And now I have to decide if I'm going to let her move in. So that's the story. That's why my wife is crying. She played a stupid game, with my heart as the prize, and she lost. I genuinely don't know what the right move is here. What would you do? Would you stay and try to rebuild? Or would you walk away and never look back? Let me know in the comments. I think I could use some outside perspective right now. Thanks for listening. It's been a lot.